Welcome everybody to the Barons Club podcast. We are live with MightyTeapot and Muckluck. We're gonna switch the scene. Everybody, to just a second here. This is actually our second episode where all three of us are here in the same state of the game discussion. We've done one, what was it, last year, and it's kind of a very different. We're in a very different phase of the game than we were last year, I think, right? So. Welcome, Teapot, Muckluck. Good to have you guys.
Thanks for having me on. And yes, we are indeed in a different place. We're in the end game now, MM.
Yeah, we are in the end game. By the way, just to let you guys know, Muckluck here is a very busy man, you know, because he's a famous internet celebrity. So we are on borrowed time right now. So we're going to try and get a lot of discussion underway.
I don't know if it's because I'm an internet celebrity. I think it's just because I'm a dad.
Yeah, could be as well. Yeah, I mean... I learned that. Maybe even Teapot will learn that soon. TM the next couple of years. Imagine a mini Teapot running around.
Oh, I do. I mean, are you sure you want to imagine that?
You'd have to name him. What was it? What was the little cup in Beauty and the Beast? You have to name him after that.
So, easy name for an online alias, I guess. So very easy time though.
Oil Baron, Teapot, and a potato in the same room. What a time to be alive. Wow, that's a good joke, I guess. Easy meme content right there. Anyway, so our discussion for today, guys, will be pretty much on wrapping up the Icebrood saga, how everything was handled. I'm sure there'll be some interesting discussion there. We're going to then switch over after that to the balance patch, and then from the balance patch, talk about the brief overview of the upcoming things that they're putting into the game, kind of to promote their announcement in July 27th. So we're going to talk about the brief overview of the roadmap that gets us to the announcement of End of Dragons. And then over that, we swap over to the End of Dragons discussion. So it's going to be interesting. And yeah, let's begin. So the first I guess the first obvious question I have for you guys is, how did you feel when you first watched the trailer for the end of the Icebrood saga versus when you actually played the final chapter, right? Because it's very two different like feelings when you actually play it versus when we saw it initially. So I'll let you guys begin, Teapot or Muckluck.
I had fairly low expectations, and I got more than I expected. And I got more and less than I expected, to be honest. Right, the thing that was really absent for me was that there was no cleanup at the end. Right, in terms of the actual story content, that was kind of about what I was expecting, maybe even actually a little bit more, because we got this open world boss, and I was like, oh, okay. I was kind of expecting it to all be resolved in a story instance, right, with not a lot of replayability attached to it. So we got more than I was expecting there. But the thing where, in my opinion, it really was a bit weird was like, where's my EOD teaser? Where is the epilogue? Like, you know, it's like, it's over, right? Like the thing, okay, but spoilers, by the way, guys, in case anyone was wondering about that. But yeah, it just disappeared completely. All of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, story's gone. That's it. See you guys in a few months, by the way. Boom. There you go. So that's kind of my general thought on the episode. It was all right. Okay. The lore people are going to be very, very angry with good reason. And it ended very, very abruptly in a 12-second cutscene, and then there was no kind of like resolution to the main plot there afterwards.
Yeah,
I agree with that. So I've been actively making content for Guild Wars 2 and playing it the last like 2.5 years. So just like me, like playing Vanilla, Hot, Path of Fire, all the available living worlds. Like I went through all of that in relatively recently, and. I remember when they announced the Icebrood Saga, you know, they brought everyone to that venue, and people were like, oh, they haven't done this since Heart of Thorns, and I was like, oh, really sweet, this is gonna be, you know, amazing. And then like there was that cinematic where it showed like the code in on the screen, and everyone's like, new race, and then they were like, nope, new living world number 5, and then I remember that guy on cape in the Jedi Sith robe. I don't even remember who that was, but it was. Like, I remember everyone leaving that venue looked really disappointed. And then it's like, okay, well, I don't know why they built up the hype so much, but this is Living World. And then after having just played Season 3 and 4, it felt, I was kind of let down. Like, Rothmar and Biora and Drizzlewood certainly were not bad. They were nice zones. I enjoyed the zones. but it certainly didn't live up to, they said that, that this is a saga. This isn't a Nether Living World. This is going to be expansion level content delivered in episodes, and it was not that. It was not that. I love most of what we got, but it wasn't that. And then changing topic to the story, I was very passionate about the story until now. I would not say I'm a lore nerd. I don't know what's going on half the time, but I'm very passionate. It was like, oh, I love this character. I hate Bram. I love this other character. I still hate Bram. Stuff like that. Like I had passions when it came to some of the characters. And then we went into this newest thing, and it was just like they just threw everything out the window. And I barely remember Guild Wars 1, but, I remember Primordius's, one of his minions was one of the big bad guys. Like, it was causing earthquakes and almost destroyed the planet. And then 10 years later, he peeks out of the ground, gets booped on the nose twice, screams, and then that's it. I was like, wow, that was after 10 years. Okay.
Well, the thing is, from Guild Wars 1 player, for me, for example, it was really like huge build up towards kind of this dragon that we've been kind of like for a while knowing that this guy is going to be a very long drawn out dragon. We're not going to face him off early off in Guild Wars 2. It was always like another dragon. We're like, but this is the original that we knew about from the Guild Wars 1 and Eye of the North expansion, right? So for me, like watching the trailer, it was exciting. I mean, it really was a good trailer. Like, it kind of hyped you up for something that was huge and, something that could be very exciting to come to the game. And then, reality was, you finish the mission and you're like, wait, that's the entire thing? It's basically one thing. And then, I mean, I guess you could say like the whole cutscene at the end was amazing. But then when you think of it, like that entire cutscene and then that entire build up towards just 12 seconds was just it just falls flat. And even the world boss itself, I mean, there's been people apparently soloing it, right? So it's just
it does scale. It scales.
It does scale. But even when it does scale, I think it's for a world boss, I guess it's okay. It kind of does have some things that you have to coordinate a little bit, right? Like you have to go kill the other nodes in a phase, and then you have to come back and then fight and break the bar for something. Like there's a bit of interaction that people are required to focus.
If there's one thing to like attack the patron, it's probably not the boss. I think the boss is actually quite well done. Like, it's not the craziest boss in the universe, but like you can solo. I mean, like anything is possible if you have Trailblazer gear. Like anything will fall if you have some kind of solo build.
Open world, it's relaxing.
Yeah. It will lose, right? Like you won't die. Now, I do, we got Mr. Doom and Gloom over here for both of these two. Let's actually put some context here, right? Because in my opinion, the context is very, very interesting here, and it actually mirrors. Because I am making a video about this, and I did some research for this. This, in my opinion, mirrors the Heart of Thorns release a lot. As in rather like, we're leading up to another Heart of Thorns S expansion, or rather we're leading up to another expansion, and the lead up to that is similar to Heart of Thorns. So Season 2 and Season 3, and honestly Season 4 of Living Story, right, have had similar issues to this, right? There have been some maps that are completely unfinished. It's actually a bit of a meme in the community. Like if I say Team 3 right now, like the chat is going to know what I meant. Like, I mean by that. Basically, it's this idea that they have teams working on episodes separately, right? So they like rotate teams around. So it takes longer than the normal cadence to develop it. So they have teams like rotating. So you'll have Team 3 does the 3rd map and the 6th map for the season. And it was very, very infamous that Team 3, for whatever reason, okay, like maybe there were less people, or maybe it was just harder to do these maps. The maps would be scuffed, right, from Team 3, and this is exactly what they were. I mean, if you look at Bitterfrost Frontier, not a very finished map. You could honestly say the same thing for Corner. You could say the same thing for Siren's Landing as well. There's a lot of things that the previous seasons struggled, but if you look at the HOT release, like Season 2, it just happens like, oh yeah, it's Scarlet. Oof, we're finally free of that character. Wasn't that bad, but people didn't like it very much. And then you have this like really big drought before the expansion, right? Like, it was the final episode of Season 2 was in January, and the expansion released in October. Yeah, have fun with that. And hey, that's certainly not going to happen this time. And like that announcement that you pointed out, yeah, that was really, really hype, and it was insanely overhyped. But why was it? Like let's actually think about like why that was. Well, up until just a few months before that, well, no, that's not true. Just around 6 months before that, they were like, everything's good, everything's fine and dandy. We're making our June video game. We're making some other projects. Don't mind us. We've just got Guild Wars 2 on the back burner. We're just going crazy, having some fun, making some other projects. And then the Koreans,
then the layoffs, right?
yeah, then they like say, oh yeah, by the way, you aren't doing that anymore, right? And bear in mind, we know for a fact that Arena, and by the way, all games companies will do this. They're not like developing on like a week by week basis. They know what they're doing in like a year from now, and like even now, they know what they're doing in a year from now, and they knew they were doing that Icebrood Saga announcement then. They probably already had a good amount of it arranged and planned, right, that they were going to do that. And I doubt they really had time to change that, because all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, you're doing an expansion, by the way, right? So go ahead and, yeah, you might want to go make that. And at the same time, it's like, what are we going to do for a year, right? And that's why they still announced the Icebrood Saga, knowing that, yeah, they probably wouldn't be able to deliver on it. And I think it's really interesting that you pointed out Biora, Grothmar, and Drizzlewood, right, Muck? Because you're absolutely right. Some of the elements, particularly at the start of the saga, were actually very well polished and like very well executed, right? If you look at the maps, right, you could say the first 3 maps in a way, right, because they split the maps up into little pieces to release them over time, right? They were actually already done. Like I think it's very, very strong, very strongly implied by this that like this was kind of already done like for a long time, and it was then as a result of it, because they didn't want to develop any more content and go on to the expansion instead, they just split that stuff up, covered it over the entire saga. So even though it was well executed, right, like, you know, like I think Drizzlewood's a really cinematic map. I think it falls a little flat in terms of gameplay, but that's another thing entirely. But what I'm trying to get at here is that the saga was a little bit unfinished, and they couldn't quite get the job done, particularly the latter half of it, right? We're talking Champions in particular, I would say was certainly probably like, right, what can we do? Let's just try and make some stuff and see what happens.
I agree with you that like the saga itself, like I think there was initially, I even remember after the announcement, people were still like not really hyped up really, because they were like, that was it, that was the announcement of another season. But I think we all agree here that the first story episodes of the saga were actually very enjoyable. I think it was a huge in my opinion, the early episodes of the saga hold up there. Like they probably even compete with Living World Season 4 story mode content, right? So it was definitely like planned, and you could see that there was a huge progression that they were planning to build towards. And, you know, when the announcement of the expansion, if that's where it ended up happening, right? Where they felt like they had to build towards Jormag, right? And we knew that like there was like the last episode of the saga before we ended up in Champions, the updates of those, like you could see there was a huge amount of planning for episodes after. But then of course with the end of Dragon's announcement, they had to cut that short, like you said. So it kind of makes it feel like it's 2 different, like I guess you could say, seasons within the same season, because the first half is just very well executed, and then the second half is just very rushed because they just couldn't put the time and effort to develop any more of these maps.
I've seen
and
a
it kind of leaves you hoping
few
for what could have been.
On this topic from Wooden Potatoes Twitter. He was speculating, and I think it's important to emphasize for the people in chat, this was speculation, that they maybe had like 4 episodes planned building up Jormag, and then maybe 4 more building up Primordius, and then there would be like a clash at the end. But then they were like getting to the end of the Jormag section, and then they were just told, hey, tie it off with a bow. We're working on this other thing now. And so then they just were like, and then, they had to just kind of like smash all their ideas together in like 1 episode at the end and just had to rush through it. Don't know if that's true, but that would certainly explain some things if possible.
That sounds perfectly plausible to me. I would even say it could have been more. And like ArenaNet planned to do this forever, right? Like in a way, like they planned to not do any more expansions, at least for the short term. They were going to just do living story releases and try different types of content while they, work on their other IP. Which, by the way, guys, makes sense. You can't have all your, you don't want to have all your eggs in one basket when you're doing anything, right? You always want to diversify. And ArenaNet's had this kind of one product for a long time, which is a little bit scary, particularly seeing as it is an aging product as well, right? It's getting old here, guys. Like Guild Wars 2 are coming up to 9 years at this point. I mean, it's been around for a while, so you do want to actually look at other other solutions, other ideas there as well. So that's what they were trying to do. And you're absolutely right. Yeah, like halfway through, they got through this stuff, and they was like, "Oh yeah, by the way, guys, we're gonna need you to kill both those elder dragons, and we're gonna go and do the expansion. Can you guys do that in half a season? Like, yeah, can we get that done?" And like the writing department was like, "Ah, no, why would you even say that?" But like, what's the alternative? Like, the alternative is like you throw that into the expansion as well. Then you have like this weird clash of these two storylines, and the expansion gets kind of scuffed. And no, you could say continue it over there and make the expansion Cantha themed. I mean, yeah, like Cantha and Jormag themed. Yeah, I guess you could do that. But do you really want to be focusing on dragons forever? Because, by the way, I do actually want to just, a little bit of a call here, a little bit of a hot take for the community here. Like, has the dragon storyline ever really been like mega popular? Like, in my opinion, I would say no. You guys like Flashpoint in season 3, where Timey shoots a laser right at Primordus and Jormag and sends them both to sleep in one episode? Yeah, guys, we've already done this, right? This episode that just happened, we already did it like a few years ago, right? So we did it even way more lame than that, because we just like said, oh, go to sleep, like, oh, see you guys later, right? Yeah, you guys like Aurene coming back to life within 15 minutes of in-game time when you actually play through the story in a linear fashion? You guys like that stuff? That's good writing, yeah? Like, you're enjoying that? Like, I think the dragon storyline is something that is very hard to actually effectively execute across the board. And I think ArenaNet, to a certain extent, want rid of it. I don't think they want to be with that. I think they want to tell the more interesting stories. And you know what? I'm going to debate the chat now. Let's talk about that. Like, what's good about that? Well, what about the Bone Skinner, right? Something like the Bone Skinner, where you have to, assist this Coden from not, craving the taste of its own bear meat to degenerate into the Bone Skinner. What about stuff like Joko, an incredibly well-loved character, or the White Mantle in season 3, or the Raid storylines, or the Fractal storyline? In my opinion, there is great writing and storytelling in Guild Wars 2. It's just not the main storyline. The main storyline is big and cumbersome, and because it's got this chosen one dynamic slapped on there as well, you end up feeling very, very contrived, right? Like, what did we do in Dragonstorm? Did we fight Primordus and Jormag? No, we fought their minions, then we flew up into the air and fired a laser beam out of them with our special action hotkey, and then Aurene just said, oh yeah, by the way, that's not good enough. I will now detonate my Omega bomb and blow them both up, but actually not blow them up, then they eat each other.
Have you ever watched Care Bear as a kid? Oh, Care Bears? For those that don't know, Care
I
Bears
know
is like
of them.
Yeah, it's a cartoon of like literally bears who have like basically their whatever they feel like is it portrayed on their stomach. So like a happy bear will have like a picture of like a rainbow or something. Like someone that feeling love will have a heart. Like they literally like their emotions can be seen on their chest. And whenever they try to solve a problem, like they get determined and they want to.
I can't wait to find out where you're going with this.
Basically, they get together and they go like, get ready for the Care Bear stare, and then they just shoot like happiness out of their chest, solve their problem. And that's basically what we did in the end of that map. We shot our happiness, Aurene, and she killed the dragons.
Yeah, that's about it.
Just I don't know. I don't know. It's in general, like, yeah, I do.
I think
agree
you
that
played a different episode than me, but okay.
Yeah, I feel like the dragon storyline, yeah, it can be at this point. It's pretty tired, right? It definitely needs a change, and yeah, for sure. I mean, a lot of things. If you go back to Guild Wars 1, that game had nothing to do with dragons, right? Dragons were just an element in the game, but they weren't even a focus. So there is a lot on the table like they can do in the storyline. I know a lot of people are like, what can they do? What direction? Honestly, ANET has a lot of direction with the storylines in Guild Wars 2. There's just so much they could focus on, right? So
well, that's what I mean. They can be free now. They can be free, finally free of the dragon. They can tell the interesting stuff.
In a sense, people were expecting these mega world boss level types of dragon fights. That is just when you scale the dragons to the point of like, this is how huge they are. Realistically, that's hard to implement in the game, right? It's just too much amount of like work to make a dragon model that huge and not mess up the game and somehow or break something else, something in a dungeon that you have no idea is broken because of this one.
Well, yeah,
content.
I mean, that's why like with Mordremoth, it was just like, all right, he is the jungle, and we like fought him in his mind and stuff like that. Zhaitan, of course, we all know how the Zhaitan fight ended in the game. I don't know what was originally planned on it. I've seen the unused model where you maybe fight him on the ground afterward, but of course, unfortunately, currently in the game, it ends with you just blasting him out of the sky with the gunship. I mean, you had to use a gunship because he was far too big for you to run at him with a sword or something. And yes, there's different ways they could do it, but I myself am not hung up on the dragons. I think the world needs an antagonist, even if it's just the two sides, like Char fighting Norn or Char fighting humans or whatever the factions are. But there has to be some point of conflict, and for me, that's all the dragons were. I think I was just more disappointed in how much they built up a villain and then just dropped it. Like it didn't. Whether it was dragons or Balthazar or Joko, it could have been any villain there. It was just the fact that they like building and building and building, and then we don't want to play with you anymore. I think that was the
Scarlet. I would argue Scarlet as I know a lot of people hated Scarlet in season 1, but I would argue she's probably the most well-developed villain this game's ever had. Actually, there was an entire season built around confronting her, and of course, season 1 was actually a little longer than the seasons we get now, but. In a sense of character development, she probably has the most developed storyline as a villain in the game. And you compare that with other minor villains, like even Balthazar, I think had because he's a human, he's a god, but like he has a personality in a way, right? Like he pretty much you could sense like whatever his motivations are and like if it could change or not. Whereas with the dragons, in theory, the concept is nice, but there's not so much. Like for example, Zaitan. Didn't have a personality. Mordremoth, we got to see that early glimpse of what a dragon motivation could be. But then you have, Jormag and Primordus who also have something in a sense like that. But then Primordus is again another Zaitan, just no personality. It's just, I'm Primordus and I'm here to destroy things, fire. And it just gets like booped. And so... Yeah, it's very hard because like their personality is just one-sided. Either that or they don't have one. And if it's one-sided, it's basically they just want to destroy the world or they have to consume the world, right? And there's only so much you can pull that storyline before it's just like it's the same thing in a different format kind of thing, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult to actually engage with something that massive. I think that Mordremoth was probably the best where they actually pulled this off so far. And Kragatoric was okay, actually. Like, it was very similar, actually. I mean, the Kragatoric and Mordremoth fights were very, very similar. Like, you basically, yes, we will enter the dragon. Okay, we'll go inside and we will fight the dragon in one way or another. And that's exactly what we did. And, that was satisfying enough, I think. It's a shame the Mordremoth fight was very buggy on release. But you know what? They kind of fixed that a little bit by now. It's very difficult to actually make something like that that's actually satisfying, which is why I think, I think you can feel a lot more connected to the game when you're fighting something like Balthazar because you were actually there, like you were actually fighting him, right? Same thing with Joker, right? I actually think the Joker fight was really, really cool. Like, you have like these bizarre mechanics where you can't see the AoEs unless you use the action key. Probably not the best design there, but it was kind of fun, right? It was an interesting fight, and you actually engage with the character. And obviously, yeah, like when you're dealing with an actual, I guess, like a humanoid, right, or something that is a bit more relatable than like a giant earthquake, right, which is basically what a lot of the dragons are. You can kind of have a little bit more fun with it, right? Like in particular Joker, right? Like Joko like had some serious personality about him, right? He's kind of like he was roasting you, he's making fun of us, right? It's good content, right? It's entertaining stuff there. And they did actually address this, right? Like for a long time, the old dragons were a bit like, whatever, right? Who even is this thing, right? But yeah, like with Jormag, they definitely tried to push this. And this is another thing I think that really builds up this theory of the idea that, they basically were doing the Jormag, which is, by the way, what's Ice Brood Saga, not the Ice Fire Brood Saga. Because, yeah, like they were developing Jormag, then they were going to develop Primordus, then they were going to just smash them into each other like over the course of multiple years. But all of that got completely cut, because of the expansion. And I guess the way I would look at this to kind of like round out my full opinion on this, because I forgot to say this, and it's very, very important. Like, yes, team, this was not good, right? The storytelling here, a little bit scuffed, right? Not ideal right there. There are definitely a lot of issues there, but I don't think it has any implications for the future of the game in the same way that the content drought before Heart of Thorns and, well, also some of the issues afterwards didn't really have any bearing on the expansion itself, right? The expansion itself released basically the biggest feature dump the game had ever had, and you had some of the community's most favorite maps of all time, right? So like Chat Garen, Octovine, Dragonsen, right? And then you also have Path of Fire, right? Like Path of Fire, like the game before Path of Fire was in a very weird, was in a bit of an interesting state there, right? They were kind of like, oh, we got to churn out another expansion, let's go. Like everything was pretty rushed. Like some of the Living Story Season 3 content was certainly the production value was not on the level that we saw in season 4, right? Like, season 4 was very, very well produced, in my opinion. A few things aside.
I honestly feel like season 3, in terms of potential storytelling, was a little, to me, it was a little more interesting than season 4. It's just because there were so many plot points they're bringing in season 3. They brought White Mantle, they brought the Mersat, they had a bit of, a couple things going on there, not just a focus on Dragon. And I think that made season 3 a little more interesting. And you also had like a little bit of politics going on with the humans, right? So it felt like season 3 had potential to be a good storytelling season. Just like you said, it was just too rushed to get into Path of Fire. So they had to end up wrapping it up a little bit.
I think season 4 was definitely my favorite. Season 3, I remember having to wiki a lot. Like the Mersat, again, I mentioned I played Guild Wars 1, but it was a really long time ago. So like when I had the Mersat, I was like, I have to remember these guys. And I would go to the wiki and I'm like, oh yeah, okay. And then there was like the I forget her name, but there was the lady that was hunting the Mersat, and she had been like immortal and was running around for, hundreds and hundreds of years. And I remember looking her up. I was like, oh, okay, yeah. So I feel like season 3 definitely hits harder if you played Guild Wars 1 and remembered a lot of it. Like there's a lot of nostalgia bombs there. Season 4 though, I remember multiple times in season 4, I actually got like chills. Some of the scenes with Joko and like when Kraukatoric led to the creation of Dragon's Fall and he became the new map. I was just like, oh, like that was so cool. I loved that so much. That was fantastic. That was definitely my favorite season.
Yeah, season 4. And you know what? I think that's a really good point actually about season 3. I think season 3 probably did actually kind of bamboozle people a little bit. There were a lot of callbacks. Like the existence of Bloodstone Fen, like the White Mantle. There was a lot of callbacks there to the original game that might have bamboozled people who maybe weren't who just straight didn't play the first game, for example. And yeah, then season 4 as well. Yeah, the production value was like, ooh, yeah, definitely on point, right? Like there was, it's Guild Wars 2 at its most cinematic as season 4 for sure.
I'd definitely say that season 4 was even Path of Fire mostly built towards season 4, right? So I think that's also why that season gets a lot of praises, because it wasn't like the season was building towards expansion. It was kind of like the expansion actually was building towards the season. So you had a lot of production episodes that just made that season very memorable. Of course, with a lot of chills and a lot of heartbreaks here and there. Of course, some heartbreaks were solved in like 15 minutes of gameplay later. But yeah, I mean, in general, seasons are, it depends on what hit people mostly, because yeah, season 3 kind of was like they rushed a lot of storylines together, and if you're a Guild Wars 1 fan who remembers a lot of them, it hits very close to you compared to others who, I mean, I think even me as a Guild Wars 1 fan, I probably have to Google something. I was just like, I know this, but let me just Google a little bit of it. So I wikied some things, but in a sense, I think, yeah, overall, to wrap up this discussion before we head into the roadmap discussion, it's interesting to see what they can be with Kantha, because here's the thing. Kantha in its own has plot lines that aren't even related to Tyria. So and we'll get this into End of Dragons later in the podcast, but that itself has a lot it has a lot of choices for us to explore.
Which is why they had to clean up this storyline as well, right? Like the reason they needed to do this is because they wanted to actually explore those storylines, and it's going to be way harder to do that if you bring the baggage of 2 Elder Dragons at the same time. Although
you're not wrong. I just think it's a funny term.
Yeah, I mean, seriously though, like I think the End of Dragons is going to be okay. End of Dragons as an entity is probably going to be better that they made this call to basically say, right, we're going to cut our losses, and just move on and go somewhere else. It's going to be new. It's going to be different. And I think it's going to be a very, very polished experience. Like, even though the Icebrood Saga, certainly in terms of production, is not quite up to ArenaNet standards, right? Like some of the content is very, very short. Some of the content isn't quite as polished or developed as we want. I don't think that actually has any ramifications for the future of the game and the future of the expansion. I think it's going to be like a really, really well-polished product, because I think ArenaNet know it's important. Right, ArenaNet are going to be very cognizant of the fact that if this goes badly, then it's not that the game will die, right? I don't want to be over dramatic. It's that the game will not grow, right? Unless that happens, right? Like the game will just stay where it is. Like this is whenever you have something like an expansion announcement, an Icebrood Saga announcement. These are the points in a games company's history where you have these opportunities to change your trajectory, right? And this is definitely one of them. This honestly might be one of the most important moments in Guild Wars 2's history, because it can either go up and up and up, or it can just kind of like flatline and just, descend back into the depths of Omega Lore. Because, hey, those other MMOs, they ain't doing so hot right now. I mean, there's a lot of anger in the WoW community right now. Final Fantasy, they've gone back to watching anime, right, and erotic role-playing, right, because they're waiting for content to come out as well, right?
Oh, please, WoW does role-play as well. Yeah. You been a Goldshire?
Oh dear.
Not seen our game?
Yeah, how do you know? Okay, you like those Draenei, Mook? You like that stuff, dude?
I am an innocent flower. I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, yeah, it was a great point that you made about that, actually. Like, and I think this is a mistake Arena Network made. And just I hate to continue talking it because I know we want to move on, but I want to really highlight how much of a good point that was, saying that season 4 was like directly continuous from Path of Fire. This is a mistake that Arena Network make again. It is a very bad idea to make your expansion so it like ends, right? So it's like, oh yeah, we killed the big bad guy, by the way, guys. Like, Mordermoth's dead. That was definitely not a good idea in Heart of Thorns. Much better in Path of Fire when it was much more continuous and linked together.
I think you're saying just at the end of it, have a hook for the next thing. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, you gotta hook people, and you gotta keep people. All those people can go, oh, I beat the game. I can go and install now.
That's kind of what Heart of Thorns felt like. I think in terms of expansion, it's better than Path of Fire, but in terms of to the next thing coming in Guild Wars 2, when you have that, it just ends at the end boss, it's killed, and then you're basically, okay, well, I'll wait till they announce something, rather than Path of Fire, where you kill the big bad, but then it's actually building towards something else, another season. So this wasn't even, it felt like a prequel to the season, right? So, yeah, we'll discuss more of this when we get back to the End of Dragons discussion, because a lot, storylines in a sense, we can relate this back. But to move on to the next topic, which is the balance patch, and in an overview of the roadmap that they released when the Icebrood Saga ending was announced, right? So how do you guys feel about, first of all, we'll get into the balance patch, but in a sense, what do you think overview of the fact that they released a roadmap rather than just saying tune in July 27th, this is going to be the stream where we discuss End of Dragons features? Exactly, right? Like, fact that
communication is good.
Roadmap, the thing is with the communication is that it gives you that, here's a roadmap, this is what we're going to promote in the game, in these game modes, and then tune in to the stream July 27th. I personally think that is, I don't know whoever was in charge of that, but that is how you market a build-up to an expansion. I'll let you guys discuss.
I got a couple things to say about that. Like, one, I think they probably knew that the vocal people were not going to be happy with the newest release that they just did. And I think whoever's decision it was to release the roadmap and also the product that they figured people might not be happy with on the same day, I think that was very smart of them. Because that made it to where even those of us that, really didn't like what we got that day, we had all these other wonderful things to look forward to, we hope. I praise them for releasing those same day. I think that probably quelled some potential fires within the community. With the exception of Reddit, that's always on fire. And then aside from that, the tune in for more details of this stuff later. It keeps you wondering, like, okay, they've already released all this. What's going to happen on that day with the additional announcements? Maybe they'll talk about the more of the elite specs. Maybe they'll trickle out some more information like they did with it. Again, I wasn't an active player when Hot came out, but I've gone back and I've watched some of the the release trailers and stuff they did. Like, oh, maybe we're gonna get stuff like this. Where they teased the Scrapper and the Chrono and they showed them for a little bit, stuff like that. It gives you something to look forward to. I've said for a long time on my own channel that there's really two things that I feel like Guild Wars 2 does poorly, and that was communication and advertising. So seeing this was very, very good for me. I couldn't praise it enough.
Yeah, the biggest thing one of the biggest things that's plagued Guild Wars 2 for an extremely long time is uncertainty. I don't need communication from Blizzard to know they're making a new WoW expansion, but I do because they're going to do that, and I know they're going to do that. I do need communication from ArenaNet because, in general, they've been quite an unpredictable company, right? It's like, oh, we're not doing expansions, by the way. This was the original plan in Guild Wars 2. We're going to do Living Strafe forever, hooray, right? Scarlet forever. But no, actually, no, we are doing expansions. And then it's like, oh, yeah, nothing happens for a long time. And then it's like, oh, yeah, now we're doing this, by the way. Right? Like Guild Wars 2, oh, yeah, are there raids coming? There's still been, like, no official confirmation that raids aren't being developed. Although that's semi-not true. That finally happened, like, a while ago, right? Like, you don't need that in other games, but you do in Guild Wars 2 because there's so much uncertainty. And uncertainty, it breeds this animosity in the community, particularly in places like Reddit. And I think this is the first step in a very, very long road to actually regaining consumer trust. I think over the years, the trust and faith in Arena, or rather confidence in Arena, has dissolved into a complete like goop within the community. And yeah, they've got a long way to go, right? They need to get a lot of
scared that
wins.
They had given up on the Legendary Armory because they hadn't mentioned it in over a year. And I was like remembering all the horror stories I've heard about like alliances and stuff, and I'm like, oh god, if they don't talk about it for a long time, that means they're done, you know? And then so just seeing Legendary Armory was on the list, I was like, yes, it's back! Even though it never possibly went anywhere, I was still so happy just to see it mentioned again.
No, the thing is, I was more surprised that I was more surprised that it was being announced to release for the expansion, because we were at this point thinking like, you know what, they might as well just release it for the expansion. It's another reason to buy the expansion. The fact that they're releasing it before, I was more shocked about that. So I think in a sense, generally, I would say when ANET when ANET knocks something out of the park, they do it very well. Like I wouldn't say that there's obviously some times where they do a lot of questionable decisions, but the moments where they do it, like really kind of like show you what they can be, those moments are always 100% like exciting, because you could see that this company has the ability to do what they can do. It's just sometimes a lot of it like it falls flat because they don't maybe put that effort to, you know. And something Snebzor told me about like the roadmap or even just the expansion, you know, they've been, you know, developing this expansion since last year. The fact that we don't get anything, like no one's asking for like a 10-minute video or a 20-minute gameplay video. Just give us like a teaser, 10 seconds, or give us a few clips or a few screenshots of what you're working on, right? They don't give enough for their own community to kind of like, you know, kind of bite on and then more or less speculate, more or less create content for the content creators. So it's, I don't know if they try to do it because they want to try and release something that's polished before or as polished as can be. But I do think they suffer from that, because when you try to achieve, you guys both know this, if you achieve perfection, you're just never going to end up completing what you're trying to go for, right? Like you need to be content with something, at least to deliver something, right? Because if you don't, you might not end up delivering. And I think a lot of the times they're afraid of releasing something that's not 100% ready, and they just feel like they'll get eaten alive by it. And so I think that they should take more risks in that, right? Like, hey, we don't want a 20-minute gameplay, but if you gave us 10 seconds of something that's happening in the expansion, I mean, Wooden Potatoes will make 2-hour videos on that. Like, think of it like that. So.
Yeah, I mean, ArenaNet they aren't very good at promoting their video game. They should definitely market it way more. I think part of this is because they live in 2005, and part of this is because Guild Wars 2 occupies a very unusual space in the MMO market, in my opinion. Like, Guild Wars 2 is in the area where people are vaguely aware of it. Like, they know of it because, you know, ArenaNet's a fairly big studio. It's one of the few kind of big MMOs that are still out there. And what ArenaNet have done is they said, hey, you know all those other MMOs that have these like kind of annoying things about them? We just removed all of those things from our game. We don't have that here. Like, we don't have any of that annoying stuff that has been pissing you off and making you quit WoW or quit Final Fantasy. So come and play our video game. And they just assume that you'll eventually try it, right? And then you'll eventually buy it. And then if you quit, they don't care because you already paid for it and there's no sub fee. So Guild Wars 2 does have this it has a unique spot in the market that that does, I'm not justifying this, but it does actually to a certain extent like validate why they are this way. Because in a big sense, they have a genius marketing plan. Their marketing plan is how bad the other MMOs are essentially, and how much less annoying to play Guild Wars 2 is. So that's the way they go about that. But yeah, though they should definitely
Being
get people
better
hyped
by
on it.
contrast is the marketing
Yeah,
plan.
yeah. Seriously, no, I'm serious. It actually is definitely, yeah. Like I could almost guarantee that that's a big part of like the way they market their game is by not. They are the anti MMO. Like Guild Wars 2 is the anti MMO. Guild Wars 2 is the MMO for non MMO players, right? Like you can play this game completely solo. There's no gear grind. There's no sub fee, right? Like you can beat everything by auto attacking, and it's also heavily story driven, right? Like this is the anti MMO.
Market that though. You could. That does not really say that that's not a reason to market though. You know what I mean? So
I'm not saying it is. I mean, they definitely should.
It's a strong point. The fact that this game, for example, doesn't have a gear grind, I think it's a strong point for this game, right? It gives players the capacity of where like you're not basically behind on content, or if you log into the game, you don't have to grind another 20 hours to get the update.
I completely agree with you, but there are many people out there that if they don't have the cookie of the new sword in front of them, they don't know what to do with themselves. There's so many people that I feel like we have to like rewire their brains to enjoy Guild Wars 2.
Well, the thing is though, this is a really fascinating thing. Okay, I'm gonna this goes back to the saga in my opinion. Oh, this is such a what a great idea you just brought up there, Buck. Oh man, because here's the thing. What did they do with the Ice Brood saga? Right, they made it really grindy. They made it like super grindy as well. And guess what? You've got this like really. Because you've got the half of the people who don't like the grind, right? Who just want to play basically a TV show, essentially, which is what Guild Wars 2 has become over the years. And then so they're like, oh, I'm so mad, I'm so angry. Like, oh, I've got to do 40 DRMs. Like, have you guys played other MMOs? 40, right? That's nothing. Like, try like 1,000, right? I know, like that's an actual grind. Okay, if you want to do 1,000, but yeah, like they've actually tried to do this a lot. Like, Arena has actually tried to appease both sides. There's a lot of like entry level rewards you can grab from a lot of the stuff that you'll get just through playing through it. You'll get like a skin you can gather at maybe like a cape or something like that, and like grab a few weapons there as well, or grab a few cultural weapons from all these different allied races there. But you want to grind, like now there is actually like a really big grind. Like, you know, they actually gave in, they caved and made it way easier now to get the volcanic stormcaller weapons. But originally they were like insanely grindy, and like the otter infusion is like super grindy, and now these glowy eye infusions, it's super grindy. Right, I think they're on the TP right now for around 5,000 gold, maybe even more than that. Actually, I don't know the exact price, but in a way, Arena is trying to fix this. They're making the game way more grindy, I think to actually in a way appeal to a broader audience. This is one of the things that Path of Fire really lacked. I think was that, you know, you beat Path of Fire, then you went right back to playing Heart of Thorns basically, because there was like nothing to grind there essentially in that content.
I just imagine that people like DeRoyer, who have like all the achievements, whenever they release one of these new really grindy achievements, he's just like, God dang it, and just flips his desk and sits down and gets to work on it, not happy at all.
Yeah.
I mean, in a sense, I guess, yeah, like roadmap, definitely something they need to capitalize more in the future. I think one thing that stood out for me in the roadmap was the fact that they kind of, if you notice, like they promoted WW and PvP bonus weeks all 3 months. Like you're gonna get one in May for both game modes, June and July as well. And it kind of, it's like they're trying to get the player base to maybe shift into those game modes for those weeks at least to try it out. Maybe they're trying to get more people involved in WW who've never done it before. Likewise with PvP. And again, more reason on why they should try and, get more of that things going on, because like we said, it kind of gets people more engaged in the game, right? Sometimes, like Muck said, you need that, carrot on a stick approach. And some people, like, that's how they operate, right? I don't fault them. Some people feel like there should be an incentive on why I play the game, and that's a good opinion. Like, and then there's some people who are just very content, and they will find a way to make the game enjoyable for them, right? So before we wrap up to roadmap, we'll probably talk more about this in a bit. How about we take a step back and discuss the balance patch, all right? Because this topic, I feel like I've seen both of your streams. I didn't cover this, but I've seen both of your streams, and very interesting points there. So I'll let you guys kick off a little bit here, right? Because I'm sure there's a lot of bottled up aggression on these balance notes.
All right, so I think I'm going to have less to say than you, You mind if I start?
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
Hit me with it. Lay it on.
So I definitely consider myself just a professional casual. Like I'm a casual player who just plays a lot, but I'm still pretty stupid. And I feel like you know a lot about the theory crafting of like the ins and outs, like what this small change is going to do for these classes and stuff like that. And I respect that. But like I'll say the biggest thing I was excited about when I looked at the stuff, and I even said this when at the beginning, I said, coming from many years of WoW, the biggest thing I'd like to see is that they spread the jobs out a little bit. Like in WoW, there was a time period where the only way to get the stamina buff, or the plus hit point buff, was to have a priest in the party. And later they were like, all right, there's people that don't have priest friends, let's give it to warlocks too. The only way to get bloodlust was with shamans. All right, we're going to make a copy of it called Time Warp, we're going to give it to mages too. And I was like, I'd love to see that. So when I saw that Scrappers got quickness, and we're hoping it's going to be 100% uptime. I know the community is kind of unsure right now. And that Mesmers were getting a 10-man alacrity option. I was very happy about that. I was like, nice, more options for group composition. I hope, if everything works out. But to me, that was one of the most exciting parts. Yeah, there were a lot of little buffs and nerfs there that are going to have lots of changes that they're going to make. But I was so happy just to see some more jobs getting spread around. I wouldn't mind if Thief got something. I laughed at the Thief, and they're like, Thief needs more diversity. We killed Boon Thief. But yeah, so I'll let you go into the nitty-gritty details, but I was ecstatic just to see some more people getting jobs that they didn't have, which might lead to some composition variety in the future.
Yeah, and I completely agree with that, right? Like the biggest thing with this balance patch is incomplete, right? Like this is incomplete because if we look at those, if you look at the quickness change, right? Like Scrapper is in a really weird spot, I think, in PvE. It's going to be a little bit like quickness Firebrand or like Chronos. It's going to do like some damage and give quickness now, or probably or heal and give quickness. But the thing is, are you really going to want to take that? Like, is that really what a lot of people are going to take? I mean, I guess if you're like a really big Scrapper fan, then you can. But I'm looking at Scrapper, I'm looking at Firebrand, I'm looking at Chrono, and I'm thinking, yeah, I think the quickness is like only like the first step in the road between bridging the gaps between these things. Like,
sure, there's other stuff.
PvE is like mega power crept. Okay, we're talking mega power crept, like omega power crept. Like there are some bosses in raids now that can barely fight you. They could it honestly feels bad. Like when I fight certain raid bosses, I feel like I'm bullying people at this point because of just how overstacked everything is within the game. And yeah, and so you're going to need to either strip a lot of these mechanics away or add a lot of these other mechanics as well, because if you look at Scrapper, it can heal pretty well, right? Okay, that's pretty good, and now it can give quickness and it can probably do damage as well at the same time. But then you look at something like Firebrand, it's like, oh, I'm going to do damage and I'm going to give quickness, and I'm also going to have healing even if I'm playing DPS because I have Tome 2
and stability and Aegis if needed.
Exactly. I have one of the most busted, overpowered healing skills in the entire game, right? Like with my instinct. And now, by the way, even more busted, thanks to a slightly ill-conceived mantra change, in my opinion. But we can get to that a little bit later, right? And you were talking about spreading the jobs out. Then explain this to me, okay? Why on earth did they give? Why do they give Alacrity to the original Alacrity class again? Like, okay, you know what? Change my mind. That was the worst possible thing they could have done with Alacrity, giving it Mirage, right? Why? Like, guys, do you guys not remember when Alacrity was Mesmer only with Chronomancer before they turned it into a boon? Like, why Mirage? I don't understand. Like, it wasn't like Mirage was like exactly bad either. Like, Mirage had its usages. It was like it was kind of like a niche pick, right? For obviously confusion-focused bosses and confusion-focused encounters. But why does it need Alacrity now? Like, you could have given that to anything. Hey, like Thief could have got Alacrity or some weird stuff. Because yeah, you're right that Boon Thief got a bit of a slap, but Boon Thief was stupid, right? Like, because Boon Thief was a gimmick, right? It only worked if you have this exact steel exactly in a raid, right? Exactly.
Yeah,
here.
It was like 3 or 4 boss fights.
And that's not good design, right? Like, yeah, it's balanced, right? It's like, oh, yeah, okay, Thief can play support on these exact bosses, but that's not because of Thief, right? That's because of an exact gimmick that we've tacked onto this boss to make it work. It's not good design. And so, yeah, like, in my opinion, Thief just straight up needs either like a massive trait line rework or a new elite spec to be a support. So, look, any Thief mains in the chat, you guys had better get used to being a healer in the next X Pack, because I think that's what's coming. Watch out. Same with you warriors. Okay?
Did any thief really ask for this? Who really asked for this? But also, here's an argument like I was trying to make, and in a way, I guess it makes sense. In a way, it doesn't make sense. So one of the things is like it balance. The reason why this balance patch doesn't make sense now is because it's probably balancing the elite specs you're expected to get in of dragons, right? But problem is it leaves us a little hanging until the expansion. If this is the only balance patch we get this year before the expansion, there's a lot of months of basically like a lack of focus for some classes because of this, right? And some classes just basically overtake other classes, right?
You saying that though reminds me of that PvP patch they did last year where they made some traits become 300-second cooldowns so that they could replace them later, and we're still waiting on
the
that.
funny thing, Teapot was afraid that the balance patch last year was going to affect his Masters of the Arena tournament so heavily, and it was just like most classes that were overpowered got like a slap on the wrist, and that was the entire patch. That was it for
Thank God.
Bora.
Well, so there are a few things here actually that are really worth talking about. They did actually say they are going to be following up on this in the roadmap, so big credit to ANET there. And in terms of like preparing for the expansion, they did do this. And if we look at some of the things they did here, particularly to Retaliation, Torment, and Resistance. So Retaliation is now Resolution. It's just condition damage protection. Resistance now doesn't prevent you from damage. It doesn't protect you from damaging conditions, only from impairing ones. And Torment is basically reverse. So it does less damage when you're moving and more damage when you're standing still. So it's going to be normal damage when you're moving, more damage when you're standing still. Like, these things actually open up a huge amount of design space. And I think they're very intelligent changes, right? Because I know we kind of went hard on them, and I was going a bit hard on some of those changes. But in my opinion, that can be fixed. You can play with numbers and fix everything that I was just complaining about, basically. Like, that's easy. But what is really hard to get around is the fact that you can't give resistance to people because it's a broken effect, right? Total immunity to all Condi damage. Can you guys imagine if there was a boon that made you immune to power damage, right? Oh, well, it's called playing Revenant, actually. But, aside from that...
Thank
right,
you. Sometimes I feel like I'm the only one saying that.
But, that aside, this is ridiculous, right? That would be so busted if that was the case. It would be so disgustingly strong. And Retail, yeah, you guys like Retail? You guys like hitting a Guardian and then you just die, right? Because, the guy's like standing there healing itself and like, oh, I'm dead. No, what a disaster. Yeah, these are really good design changes. And Torment, okay, Torment, let's not even get into that. Torment is probably one of the most hated conditions in the entire game, I would say. Like, maybe after, like, Weakness, because it is a lose-lose. You either stand still to counterplay the Torment and die, because not moving in PvP is not a very smart idea, or you move and take loads of extra damage and die. So, yeah, they've actually... made this a lot more interesting there. I would say it actually makes it less interesting in PvE, because I kind of like the idea that, if a boss moves a lot, then my Torment's good. Now it's like, my Torment's good because bosses are big and fat and don't move that much. So that's kind of the casualty of war, is actually PvE here, in my opinion. And that Condi Scourge benchmark, here we go. Like, that's going to be a good one next patch. But yeah, like, I think they have actually done some good groundwork here. They can give resistance to more people. They can help out classes that struggle with Condis more, because they can give them resolution instead of making them immune. The biggest example of this was Condi Herald in PvP. Condi Herald has had this like really big reputation for going like, oh, I've got perma resistance, by the way. Nice. Have fun. And now they have opened a bit more design space. So classes that, again, like struggle to cleanse can now have some damage reduction, right? Now you can have, you don't have like this ridiculous thing with Retail where you can just like porcupine yourself to death. Now Torment isn't going to be oppressive. These are great changes. Now the downside of this is that they didn't actually, and this is what I meant by incomplete earlier, they didn't actually compensate for any of this. So instead of just like saying, oh, Condi Rev, you play a little bit differently now in PvP. It's more like Condi Rev, uninstall, right? And the same thing with Condi Necro and
sure
Mirage.
fine.
same time. Well, I mean, yeah, it will be playable, but it will be like yikes, like this is way worse because they're losing their mitigation with resistance because that's being nerfed significantly now, so it doesn't hide them from the damage, only from the movement impairing stuff, and their damage is getting like slapped into a billion pieces. So yeah, like that's going to be a big nerf. And bear in mind they added resolution too. So in other words, every Condi build is now going to have to deal with resolution. Okay, and they do less damage, except for bleeding mills. For example, hey, you know who wins here? That's right, guys. It's your boy, the Rangers. Okay, the Rangers, your Soul Beast, right? Your Condi Soul Beast, your Condi Druid, that kind of stuff. You're all good. Like you're good to go. Well, except for resolution, I guess. So you're still sad.
But wouldn't you think like maybe increasing burst damage on Condi builds might be okay? Because like there's a lot of.
I was talking about PvP. You're talking about PvE, now, like the exposed.
So like in PvP, because like in PvE. In general, in PvP, like there's a lot of power builds that most of the time will have the big burst damage, right? Initial combo damage. But I feel like Condi's always like they kind of like build up in the last 4 seconds into the fight, and sometimes that 4 or 5 seconds kind of makes a difference if it's in a team fight or if you're trying to rest somebody.
Yeah, but I think that's just one of the pros of like, okay, this is coming from someone who likes to play Condi builds. I'm okay with the fact that I'm not bursty. Like I chose to play condition. I have a smaller amount of stats. Like, if you're power, you gotta build power and precision and ferocity to get those big numbers. Condi, you've only got to build condition damage. So I feel like a pro is you've got a easier stat budget. Con is you have a little bit of ramp up time, and I think that's okay. I don't have a problem with that design.
That is the correct answer.
Fair enough.
Thanks, Dad.
Condi shouldn't be bursty, and in particular, it shouldn't be overly spammy. It's the same thing with boons, right? Like this has been introduced over the course of the game in every game mode, but you see this particularly negatively affecting the game in PvP and World versus World. Like you don't get like 3 or 4 Condis on you. You get like 10 Condis on you, and you don't get like 1 boon on you. You get a billion boons on you. Like this has been tuned down a lot in World, but in PvP, like in PvP. A lot of support specs are like, ooh, like a little bit cut down. But the thing is that they're really cut down, but they're still really strong because of how good boons are. Like, and Noreen added loads of them and added loads of conditions too to the game. So you get bursts like ultra hard already, and yeah, conditions shouldn't be bursty. They should be very, very slow. The exception to this would be confusion. Confusion is the one rule breaker here because it can burst you because you can punch yourself in the face and die. So that's the one exception. But everything else, no, you should not really be able to burst with Condi. It's a bit unhealthy to have something like that. Like there are exceptions here. The exception is Burn Guard. Burn Guard is kind of allowed to do this because it only has 1 Condi. So if you die to a Burn Guard, it's like, oh well, I mean, come on, it's like 1 Condi.
I feel
like
there's a few
thief
that, right? builds that have a bit of Condi burst, like the pistol ones.
Yeah,
they can show up and just overwhelm you, and you're just like, oh Jesus Christ, like in like 2 seconds.
Yeah. Yeah, you're lucky. Yeah, you should be happy you did not play in the era, or didn't play as much anyway, where this build was actually way stronger. Condi Thief used to be absolutely disgusting. It still is, and it's actually getting a bit of a slap this patch actually with its Grandmaster trait being reworked, so it gives bleeding instead of confusion, which is definitely a bit of an oof for sure for Condi Thief. But yeah, like this build has historically been a big problem for PvP because it's very uninteractive, it's very bursty, right? And it just destroys you, right? Absolutely, yeah. Like Condi Thief is the perfect example of why Condis shouldn't be overly bursty, because it is extremely unfun to play against, right? Is it beatable? Yes, but it's unbelievably unfun. And by the way, I would say the same thing about power builds here. I'm not like biased against Condi. If you have like a build that one-shots you out of stealth, not fun, right? Okay, not entertained to play against that in any way.
2-3 hits and you're dead, basically, kind of thing. You're already down, wondering what hit you. But again, it goes back to the whole thing, right? Like, while this build, a lot of the questions they kind of raised with this balance patches, again, do you feel like, I mean, is there a reason that maybe we get another one down the line, or more likely we just end up with this and we just have to carry out the expansion? That's the thing. Like, if this balance patch makes sense after the expansion, because we're like, oh, these elite specs these elite specs that just got released, this is why they did those changes in April or was it May? It's gonna be next week, so in May. So like, is it that sense, or do you feel like it might fall flat? And because anyways, just as much as any MMO that comes out, right? Like whenever new builds get released, new elite specs, new professions, the game is gonna be broken for about a month before they fix everything, right? So I think it's any use for them to prepare from now, and it might just work in the expansion, or do you think the expansion will still deal with more broken specs, more broken traits, more broken conditions and specific skills? So what's your take on that?
Broken numbers are fine. Broken design is not broken numbers are fine. Broken design is not fine. I think these changes make sense now, by the way. Like the only confused changes are Warrior. I think 2 developers worked on the Warrior changes and they didn't look at each other's work and just did some random stuff basically to Warrior. But yeah, like
I'm laughing because it sounds accurate.
Yeah, it makes like all the changes like are logical. It's just that they need, there's like a second half missing, right? We're missing the second half, and we're probably going to see that like a little bit later, right? Hopefully in a few months when the next patch comes through. But if we're talking about the special, we're talking about the expansion and the elite specs. The most important thing is that they just don't overstack the design. I mean, like I'm going to use the word nonsense here to describe. You know what? You've sold me. Okay, I've been watching a lot of Mukluk. Okay, guys. And he's got me on the Guardian hate train. Let's bash Firebrand some more, guys. Let's go. All right, let's just swing the hammer at it. Like, Firebrand is nonsense, guys, okay? Like, compare it to Core Guardian. Core Guardian F1 is like, oh, everyone can burn a little bit now, guys. Okay, and Core Guardian F2 is, oh, I can heal a little bit, guys. Maybe a bit of cleanse if I trade it, by the way. Only if I trade it. And 3 is like, oh, you guys can have one Aegis. One, right? One of them, okay? Enjoy that Aegis, guys. But then what is Firebrand? Like, Firebrand has this like absurdly overstacked design, and it was its ultimate downfall as well, because at the big Firebrand it just has reflect, it has resistance, it has stability, it has taunt, it has CC, right? It has stability, right? You've got healing there, you've got cleansing, you've got loads of boon access there, like loads of actual damage as well on the F1 tome. And this led to a very, very big problem particularly in every game mode, really, actually. So I won't say particularly in PvP, but PvP is where you saw this storyline play out. Like the inherent design of something like Firebrand or Scourge, by the way. Scourge is the one that no one complains about, but is honestly far worse than Firebrand. And look, then we haven't even got to Mirage yet, by the way. Like, let's not even go there. But like a lot of these things have incredibly strong design that make them impossible to balance. Like Firebrand is either going to be insanely oppressive or it's going to be nerfed to the point where it's useless, right? Like that's basically what's going to happen. Like you either have to make it a bit more one-dimensional and make the utility not good, or you have to reduce the damage a lot on it, right? And make it significantly worse. Because as long as you have Tome of Resolve and Tome of Courage, right? Firebrand is always going to be like the cheese option. It's always going to be easy cheesy. So even if you have higher DPS options, which by the way you do, you can play higher DPS things than Firebrand in raids. Very easily, and in Fractals too, you won't do that. And the reason you won't do that is because it makes everything a joke. Like it breaks the game. And this is what I think Arena really needs to be careful about. Like Path of Fire in particular introduced a lot of game integrity destroying mechanics. In particular, I would say Firebrand and Scourge are the 2 really big examples of this. Heal Scourge is a build that is by far the most overpowered build in PvE, not even close. There is nothing that even compares to how broken that build is, and it's because of Scourge existing that build exists.
Dude, what are you talking about? I love taking my Scourge with 9 complete newbies to Bone Skinner and then one-shotting the boss with 107 reses. It's fine.
Yeah. It's fun, and obviously in PvE it's not an issue, right? Like I actually don't mind stuff like that in PvE. If that's in PvE, honestly fine. Like I think it raises some issues in raid CMs, because if I can just like walk over a raid CM because I have this really, really OP build, probably not good for the health of the game and like the kind of like the reward, like the effort versus reward kind of thing within the game there as well. But this is the thing I really want Arena to focus on. Don't release broken design. Like you can have some insane numbers, have every class on release do 50k DPS. That's irrelevant. Like you can just nerf that like 2 weeks later. People can have their fun, do some ridiculous boss kills, right? And like one-shot people in PvP. Sure, right? Like that's fine. That's not an issue. The problem is where you have Mirage. right? And Mirage, a mechanic so broken that they had to actually remove a dodge roll, and it was still oppressive, right? And it actually turned out that it's still quite strong. And you started to see play again with one dodge, right? They nerfed everything about it. They gutted every trait line on Mesmer in PvP. They slapped it. They punched it. Like Core Mesmer, dead. Chronomancer, dead. Mirage, still there. I am still here, guys, because my profession mechanic is fundamentally broken, right? And that's what you've got to avoid, right? Otherwise, you'll never be rid of these things, and they will massively compromise the other specs as well. Because obviously, you know, if you have an elite spec, it is to a certain extent reliant on the core classes, right? As well, like, you know, it does have interactions with the other trait lines, and this means that you might have to nerf a trait line to nerf an elite spec, and this is a really big problem because it means that you end up annihilating the other options. Like in your quest to get rid of Mirage, you also just delete the other options as well from the other builds, right? And that's a really big issue. And that is my there you go. I've ranted about this for long enough because I feel very, very strongly about this. I think Path of Fire really compromised the integrity of Guild Wars 2. It was fun, but I think it really compromised the integrity of the game modes. Every single game mode was punched by the release of Path of Fire because of how powerful the design was on a lot of these specializations. And when I say design, I mean like the profession mechanic, tomes, Mirage Cloak, shades, and so on and so on and so on.
Don't just kind of two small segues there. Talk about the tomes. Yeah, remember they also said that each elite spec should have a drawback, like when they made it so that Soul Beasts couldn't pet swap anymore, or Druids got minus 20% to all their pet stats. I'm still waiting to find out what Firebrand's drawback is. Yeah, they're like, here's 15 additional buttons on your function keys. We'll come back about that drawback later. I don't know what theirs is yet.
That's, you know, like that's the drawback, is that Firebrand is the baby of the game.
Is that your fingers get tangled?
So actually, there was a very interesting suggestion that Kiba was thinking on how honestly specs should have operated in the game, and they can still do this. I mean, it's not like they can't change this now. And he feels like right now, because I mean, in general, right, specializations in this game, each a different class, right? Like you could argue that Guardian, Ranger, all the classes basically are multiplied by another 2 specs, which are they're each separate class. And because of that, this is what leads to a lot of these balances. You take something from this, you basically give it to 2 other classes. You buff something here, you basically remove the role of 3 other classes. And rather than have specializations basically be another class entirely on their own, why not have the specialization in which, in a sense, would make... I think this makes the most... in terms of like how this should be done, I think this makes most sense, is have the specializations be enhancements of a core class. So that way you're... And I think this should have been how they implemented it, but they just, I guess, ended up creating multiple classes for one core class, which makes it very difficult to balance. So instead of having specializations be a different class, have them just be enhancements to the core class in a different way. So that way you don't end up with all these multiple classes that you're balancing, because ultimately, you know, you're balancing what? You have 9 classes in the game. You know, multiply that by 3. You're basically balancing 27 classes at this point, where if there were enhancements of a core class, there's still just 9 classes. Yeah, what would be your take on that? Like, if there were just enhancements towards a core class versus the way that they are now?
I mean, that's a class by class thing. Like, usually if I'm talking to brand new players and they're asking about like, oh, can I play Core Ranger at endgame? I might say like, well, you know, PvP, Core Ranger is fine. It has some very viable builds in PvP. In PvE, most people would say, okay, Core Ranger is DPS, Druid is a healer, Soul Beast is better DPS. You know, it's a straight up improvement to what that job is, that role. So it really, I think it depends on the class and it depends on the position they're playing.
I would fundamentally disagree with the idea that would even help or make it better. I think you can actually do this very, very well. A great example of this would actually be Reaper. Reaper is probably one of the best designed elite specs because it has a very clear drawback. You are now melee and your Shroud decays faster, but it plays out completely differently to Core Necromancer. and is a very, very different spec. So yeah, I think the way they have their design is actually good in some places. It's just that it falls flat in a few other areas. And I think like the multi-game mode thing is a really good call there by Muck there as well, because is Scourge inherently bad or like inherently problematic in PvE? A little bit, right? But I think Scourge is fine. I kind of like carry builds. I think having carry builds is completely okay in your video game, and Scourge is that, and so is Firebrand to an extent. But that's okay to have that. The issue is where you have this interfere with the competitive game modes, because it's like when you have a mechanic about holding points, and I have shades that I can put on the point and then stand off the point and kill you with them. Yeah, that's maybe a little bit unhealthy, right? Probably shouldn't exist in that game mode. So I think as long as ArenaNet kind of recognizes what's healthy design for a certain game mode and what should be within the parameters of that game mode, you can actually go pretty wild with the design, right? Like you can be out there, in my opinion. You just have to be a little bit careful with stuff that's not going to completely crush everything in the game mode that you're targeting there, right? Not every elite spec needs to be good in every game mode. The exception being open world. I would say that everything should be good for open world content, and then for like the more specialized content like raids, fractals, PvP, world versus world. That's where you might say, oh, if you're going to play NG in world versus world, you're going to want to play a scrapper, right? Because that's what NG does in world versus world, right? Or in PvP, like if you're going to play Guardian, you're going to want to play. Well, I mean, that's a terrible. That's a bad example right now. Yeah, if you're going to play Guardian,
we're trying to fight against.
Yeah, if you're gonna want to play Guardian in PvP, then you want to play Core Guard right now. Actually, funnily enough, because it's funny we talked about drawbacks, right? On Firebrand Tome, tomes are worse than Core Guard virtues in PvP right now. Because they have tomes don't have cast times, so they're slow, whereas instant cast, because this is actually there is kind of a drawback here. Like virtues are instant cast, they have much shorter cooldowns, and they also have like a very, very big radius on them as well. So there is actually a subtle drawback there with these things. It turns out that tomes are actually very, very bad, and this was what I was alluding to earlier, by the way. Firebrand tomes are bad because they just took all the numbers and said, right, those numbers are all 1 second now. And all of a sudden, yeah, it's not good anymore, obviously, right? But that's the fundamental issue with Firebrand's design, right? It's either going to be a strict upgrade over Core Guardian, or it's going to be absolute trash. And that's where it is right now. Like Firebrand is honestly one of the worst specs in PvP right now. Feels bad. Like, it died. There was a good hybrid build for a while, but I'm afraid it died for Burn Dragon Hunter's sins. Permeating Wrath. And it had to go. It had to go, unfortunately. But you know what's actually really funny about that is that the DH build was very unhealthy, but the Firebrand build was actually kind of okay. It had a lot of weaknesses in a way that the Trap DH didn't. Like Trap DH was mostly like very, very strong because of the rune, right? And the damage was way too high. But this is kind of like a really difficult thing to balance for that exact reason. Like Firebrand basically got completely caught in the crossfire, even though it wasn't super great at the time. It got eviscerated because Burn DH was so strong.
I was going to touch on that earlier. You mentioned that with Mesmers. You were like, yeah, we nerfed Core Mesmer, we nerfed Chrono, and Mirage is still standing. And I was having flashbacks to when there was a period of time about 2 years ago when Sikkim Sniper was running rampant in World v World. And
very good.
I was playing my newbie Druid, and I was playing around with like a Shouts build. And then they're like, all right, wow, these guys are doing really well. Okay, all Shouts are now commands. Y'all can't use any runes related to Shouts. And it was just like, Sikkim Sniper went from here to here, and then like every other Ranger build that was like here just fell off the bottom. I was like, oh, come on. It's like we got nerfed with a blindfold and a shotgun. Just got caught in it. I've had that same feeling.
You go back to Firebrand, which actually in World vs. World, Firebrand, they've been trying to come up with a meta that doesn't need Firebrands, and it's just too good of a class that no Zerg will ever run without them. And that's been the meta since Path of Fire. Okay, so it's honestly, there's a lot of ways they could probably try and get the mode refreshing with different builds, but reality is that when you build a class like that just, I mean, talk about the burn stacks, right? I mean, the fact that you just put 4 Guardians, you don't even need a full like 6-7 Guardians. You just need 4 Guardians in a Zerg. They'll do enough damage to the opposing Zerg. That's really where it is on Firebrand. So I think like in a sense, um, they want to try and balance a lot of things, but the fact that I don't know, I think maybe is it fundamentally the class is just hard to balance in the sense that it's either too weak or too strong. Because there's never been a in the middle type of build. I feel like for Guardian, it's always like it's pretty up there in terms of like optimal builds, or it's just maybe it falls a little flat. It's never in the middle of like there's like 8 builds that can compete with it kind of thing,
Yeah, I mean,
right?
Yeah, this is exactly what I meant. It gets carried by its design. And in World vs. World, I actually want to slightly correct you there. You said that it's been since Path of Fire. This is actually not true. It's since the literally day one of Guild Wars 2.
No, I'm talking about Firebrand spec in general.
Yeah, but I mean,
Firebrand,
it's you know, but the thing is, in World vs. World, Firebrand isn't as such the problem. It's actually Core Guardian. It's way too strong. Like, if that makes any sense, right? Like, Core Guardian is what makes like Firebrand so oppressive, because you have stand your ground basically, like, and you are the only one who can do this. And there is no other class that can really do this to an effective level. The obvious thing would be Soul Beast, and Soul Beast, it's really funny like how strong Guardian is because of the versatility it can provide. It can be like a great healer. It has good CC, right? It has resistance, stability, Aegis, all this kind of stuff. It's got so much versatility that it can actually defeat unbelievably powerful mechanics. And if you look at something like Dolyak stance on Soul Beast, it is an unremovable like damage reduction and immunity to movement impairing effects, and you get stability off that as well. And it's still not good, right? Enough to play in World versus World, right? Like, you can have this ridiculous skill, and it still isn't good enough to actually replace a Guardian in a World versus World Zerg. Now, a big part of this is because I think ArenaNet kind of chose Soul Beast's weapon very poorly. Because the thing about some of these specs in World vs. World in particular is that it's very hard to make a build, right, for a Zerg, right? Like, people have tried. You can role play as an arrow cart. That's about as close as you can get. But the thing about stuff like Ranger and Thief and Mesmer to an extent here as well, like Mesmer is still very good in World vs. World, but it's because it has like a few really good skills. You don't have like a full build. Like, if you're playing a Mesmer, it's like a very dehumanizing experience. You're like, oh, they only want me for my utility skills, man. That's all they want, and that's exactly what it is, right? Like, if you are basically a walking utility bot, and this is a problem with World vs. World because it like encourages you to stack things essentially just by the nature of the game. It's like, oh, you want to have the best of this, as much of it as you can, right? And for a very, very long time, that's been basically Necro and Guardian, because what else can really corrupt boons outside of Necro? Nothing, right? Hey, maybe you know what? Let's give that to Guardian next X Pack. Let's go. I'm ready for the Dark Paladin, like 50-man Guardian squads, right? Firebrands combined with 3 Dark Paladins, every single subgroup. Nice. That's what I'm talking about, right? There's the content coming through. But yeah, like the thing about World vs. World is I think they can definitely shake it up. They just have to give, in particular, stability to other classes, and they need to give builds to other classes. It needs to be a well-rounded thing that does something. It can't just be, hey, Soul Beast, you can like longbow auto-attack people and give stability. No, because you're competing with Firebrand, which is healing, CCing, cleansing, giving stability, giving Aegis, is very, very tanky, has reflect, has resistance, right?
Basically does everything.
I like that you just suggested the most absurd, overpowered buff to Soul Beast, and then you immediately were like, let me show you how that's not good enough to beat a Guardian, and you're right, and I hate it.
It's not a buff that's in the game right now. The Dolyak stance thing that exists.
No, you said stability on auto attack longbow 1.
Oh yeah. Sorry, yeah. Okay, yeah. I mean, yeah, like even if they did something like that, it probably wouldn't be good enough. Yeah, I mean, like, because you don't have a cohesive build, you wouldn't be able to create a cohesive build like with this. It just isn't good enough. And to be honest, I think they can shake it up. I would really like to see like Soul Beasts be in World vs. World, like to kind of fulfill the stability role, right? Like of World vs. World, because that's what's really lacking right now, ultimately. Like, the thing that's really lacking is the stability role. Because if we look at everything else, like damage, you can play Weaver, right? You could even play Thief, right? In small scale stuff, like, not as long as it's not like mega crazy. Like Staff Daredevil, you're gonna slap people with that, right? You can do that. Even in a like a slightly, in a full on like squad setting, you could do it. It's not as good as it used to be. It used to be very strong in GVG stuff, but you can play that. But and you can kind of go across the board. Like Mesmer sees play with like Veils and Portals, right? And some other, Gravwell, Focus Pulls, some utility stuff there as well. Obviously, you've got your NG, you've got your Scrapper there to cleanse stuff. You've got your Necros to do damage, right? Your Guardians to heal stuff, right? Most professions can actually see some kind of value in a decent sized world versus world group. It's just that Guardian in particular and Necro are pretty much, you aren't getting around those, right? You are not getting around those two specs. And Warrior and Rev to an extent too. Like Rev, I didn't mention them because it just goes without saying, right? Like you're not getting around that because of how good they are in this situation. Like Rev maybe a little bit less so because it's more of like me hit you very hard with hammer now rather than anything else. But yeah, like it's difficult. Like I think loosening up stability and giving some stab access to other professions will probably be the way to go. But that's a very delicate balancing act because you've got to give it to the right profession, otherwise it's going to be worse.
Yeah, it's also one of the, I guess, problems of having a quote-unquote non-holy trinity is that you kind of want every class in a way playing both a support role that it can support itself and then also a very good role in the fight. But again, there's some things that are done in a way where one class ultimately takes the entire job of every other class, and the other class is just like, I can do this, and then this one class is just like, yeah, but I can also do the other things that you can't. So it's like I feel like kind of maybe is one drawback of the Holy Trinity, right? Because you can't maybe try and get everything as balanced as possible without one class ultimately standing on top. And for me, Guardian, personally, I think like Guardian in a sense, you take away stability, you take away any other boon that Guardian does, it feels like this class is meant to do all these. I don't know, maybe it's because like Guardian for a sense has been doing this for a long time, but it just feels like you take any other boon from Guardian and it's like this class, this trait is specifically like this class makes sense on why it has this trait. And it kind of like, again, when you go like, yeah, Ranger or Soul Beast can do stability, but Guardian can do this, and then times the other things, right? It's just the fact that like you feel like Guardian without any of these traits feels incomplete, even though it shouldn't be already overpowered to this point.
Something I'm looking forward to after the patch notes hit is the first time in PvP that a Herald that didn't read the patch notes uses that skill that pulls all allied conditions to themselves and gives themselves resistance. And then they just implode like a black hole.
There are going to be some great clips. I'm ready for the clips of that. That's going to be some good stuff.
I know that I'm going to accidentally do that with Signet of Renewal, which is like the Ranger equivalent, where they send all the conditions to their pet and the pet gets resistance, and I'm just going to watch the pet just... It's just puff of fur. Like, oh, crap, I forgot.
Man.
So we've been kind of on this balanced discussion. I think we covered some pretty much summary of what we all thought about this. I think if we just made a podcast on balanced discussion alone, that's like 5 hours. So to kind of just get into the next topic of the podcast, what do you guys feel like the roadmap ending towards End of Dragons, and really what are some of the features or maybe some things you speculate will be talked about in the July 27th announcement on Guild Wars 2 stream? What do you think we expect to see? Like full Path of Fire levels of like they revealed everything in that one stream, or do you feel like they'll release something but then there's more up and coming things down the line? Because there's either they drop everything in one go or they build up towards it to the expansion.
I've got
what would you guys think?
Two guesses. One is maybe elite spec teasers, like unfinished elite spec ideas and stuff. And the second is whatever the new... How can I explain this? Hot had gliding, Path of Fire had mounts, EOD has a what?
Cash cow!
No, that's already there. It's the gem store. The new thing. We all just gotta get like trucks.
Yeah, I mean, like, yeah, for sure. I mean, that's exactly what's going to happen. I mean, I think we're going to get even more than that. I think we're talking release date. We're talking, we're talking elite specs. They're going to probably drop them. I mean, they even actually, again, they did actually allude to this a little bit in the roadmap. They say that around that time, you're going to be hearing about the EOD beta, which is exactly what happened with Path of Fire. We had this Path of Fire beta where they let us play the specs in the game, like in the live game, right before things were going to test them out and try stuff out and make a little beta character and make whatever you want and play play that kind of stuff. So I think you're going to get info about that. They're going to tease all the specs. They're going to do a little story teaser probably with a bit of a cutscene. We're going to see a lot of shots of the pretty weeaboo architecture, right? That's going to be fun. There's going to be loads of crazy stuff, right? They're going to go berserk, right? Like Ainut's going to go berserk.
Not
I think they're dropping almost
not
everything.
cultured, but the weeaboo architecture.
Yeah. Yeah, they're dropping all. Seriously, I think they're dropping everything on July 27th. Again, I don't know for sure, but I think we're not looking at a long period of downtime. I think this whole lead up there is extremely calculated. Like Ainut, we always accuse them of not being risk takers, but in my opinion, Arena is the most loose cannon company out there. Like these guys, they're just gonna announce it and drop it in a month and a half. Like, do you guys think it's gonna be July? Then you wait 3 months? No, dude. Are you kidding me? They're like, oh yeah, guys, it's coming out next week. By the way, I mean, it probably won't be that extreme, but I wouldn't be surprised if they were like, yeah, September, by the way, boom, there you go. Right? I wouldn't even write off the table. They'd just say, oh yeah, it's coming out literally in a month from now, guys, at the end of August, which would really, it really sucks because I want to play New World, and New World's coming out at the exact same time, so unlucky, I guess. But that I wouldn't be surprised if they did that. I'm guessing September is going to be the release. But if they said, oh yeah, by the way, it's coming out in 28 days, I'm like, oh yeah, okay, that's that. Yeah, I expected that. That's Ainut. It's going to be big. Right? It's going to be their big PR bomb. They're going to drop that bomb, and I think that's to kind of defend Ainut's marketing.
I feel like we had this conversation last year, and you guessed July, and I guessed December 31st because I was a naysayer, and then now it's 2021. So should we just say the same things again?
Yeah, it basically is. But here's the thing, right? They've been announced April of last year that they were in development, right? And we talked about this was the same question last year, right? How far are they in the development stage from that announcement, right? And we said, Muck, I think you said they should at least have been 2 months in it, or at least there should have been 1 or 2 months that they already started. But otherwise, they wouldn't have announced something that they haven't even begun on. So assuming that they were already working on this from March or Feb of 2020, right? And you can even argue this was under the works in January or maybe something, right? I would say it wouldn't be surprising, like Teapot says, if it's oh, you know what, it's dropping on the anniversary, or it's dropping in a month from now, or from the announcement, or 2 months from now. Well, because they've had significant time to develop this expansion, right? The only other time we've seen this was with Heart of Thorns, which they probably gave about a year as well in development, and Path of Fire was probably less than a year. So I wouldn't be surprised, like Teapot says. And I think, honestly, this year is a must for them, right? Because you have New World, you have a lot of other games that are trying to release in the same time frame, and if you release in 2022, chances are people are just already more integrated into the new MMOs that are coming out, and they need this time frame to compete and attract and give a reason for people to just stick around in End of Dragons and then build after that kind of thing.
I don't know when they're planning on doing that Steam released, but that will be really big as well whenever they get around to that.
Yeah, probably after the expansion. Steam release, I think they're gonna fix all the things that might not be quite right with the expansion, then say, oh yeah, game's on Steam, by the way. That will be my guess, I think.
That will be like a Terra, Black Desert Online, that Star Wars one I forget the name of. All of their populations more than doubled when they went to Steam, and free-to-play players could give it a try. So I think that will be really big as long as they prepare the servers for it.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, if there's anything that is really, really robust and reliable about Guild Wars 2, it is actually the servers, funnily enough. So we're in good hands there, I suppose. We are in good hands in that regard.
I mean, it's, I feel like with the expansion features and the things that they could maybe offer to kind of hook players into the expansion, someone was saying, what kind of game-changing features can they do, right? And if you look at Heart of Thorns had gliding and the mastery system, which is, I guess, a game-changing feature into the game. Probably the biggest game-changing feature was Heart of Thorns, just because it's the original expansion that built the mastery point system. And then you could look at Path of Fire, and mounts was the game-changing feature for that, right? That was the feature that kind of has changed the way we play Guild Wars 2 now, right? So what possible things can they really do in End of Dragons? I don't know what other game-changing feature they can do besides, at this point, maybe a new class, which I don't think is possible, or a new race, which again, they either make the race have its own playable starter zones, or the race starts at level 80. And I think that's really the only game-changing feature. I could be mistaken. If there's something you guys think is more game-changing than that, let me know. But it's just based on what they can add to just enhance the game in that level. It's very, yeah, player housing, better engine. The thing is, player housing, I don't think it's to answer someone in chat, player housing, the thing is we have guild halls in a sense and home instance, and I feel like player housing would kind of just be
Yeah, but I think we know that
that
when someone says player housing, they mean a customizable home instance. They mean like a home instance with the guild hall tech in it where they can move things around. That's probably what they want.
you just work on guild halls to be, I guess.
But then they have
better.
to make friends, GuildMM.
Well, then Arena have to actually talk about guilds. I mean, look, I mean, that is a dirty word here. I'll have you know. Okay,
It's those things that are warring each other, right?
Yeah, I believe so. I think so. I think there may be a few of those. I think when you have a conflict like that, I believe you call it GVG. But that's ruining world versus world, so we certainly can't have any of that. But yeah, no. I think player housing is probably my guess as well. I mean, again, Arena is crazy. Weirdly enough, I would not have predicted mounts because it's like we have waypoints, guys. Why do we need mounts? We don't, right? But yeah, like Arena, we're like, yeah, we're gonna do mounts, and I would probably say that player housing is like my best guess, but who knows what it's gonna be? I think player housing, by the way, would be very, very lucrative because ArenaNet found out very quickly that mounts are extremely lucrative, right? It's kind of like the backbone of a lot of the financing for Path of Fire, and there will be a feature like this in End of Dragons, and yeah, that's what I would predict it to be. But in terms of like gameplay hook, okay, look, can we not talk about this? Right, okay, I'm getting mad now, right? I'm getting mad because, wait, you're saying like, oh, what's going to hook them into the game? What about the fact that the game's actually good? Right, like, can we talk about that for a moment?
Like, features, right? When I say hook,
who cares?
I don't mean
why
thing that will hook you into the game. I mean like something
why do we
that
need
like
that?
is the expand, like HOT mastery, POF kind of mounts. What's another game?
I mean, who cares about that stuff? Like, who's like, oh yeah, guys, I play Guild Wars 2 for the mastery. It's like, dude, no one says that. Like, yeah, see, like, he's laughing,
statement.
right? He's going crazy. He's
like, oh my god, Iceberg Saga,
right?
Ravenlocks. Oh,
yeah,
I love Ravenlocks.
Yeah, it's so good. No, like, no, I mean, I don't think you need to like really worry about features too much with regards to this. I mean, no, I'm joking. I'm not actually mad. Okay, MM, I love you. What do you know?
I know.
Yeah, I love you. And hand over your Chak egg sacks. But it's just that yeah. I don't think they really need to worry about this stuff. Like, in my opinion, the biggest selling point of Guild Wars 2 is that it's one of the only MMOs that actually has good gameplay, right? Like, other MMOs, like, oh, I'm going to cast my fireball, guys, right? Oh, wow, so much fun. In Guild Wars 2, you can dodge stuff. It's much more mobile. It's way more dynamic. There's loads of buttons to press. Like, you can do way more. Like, you're not often playing one role, right? You can be like a hybrid class. The game is very, very pretty, right? The game, it's good, right? It is a good video game. There's a lot of activities. There's no downtime, right? There's no annoying grinds and like stuff like that. I mean, there are some time gates, but we don't talk about those. But like you don't need like these big features like to play the game, in my opinion. I think ArenaNet should really focus on what they do best, which is making a very, very good video game that's very ahead of its time mechanically. It's exactly what Guild Wars 2 is. I mean, look, can you guys believe this? Like, what's the competitor to World versus World in ESO?
Do you mean like
maybe?
other MMOs?
Yeah,
I know
maybe
ESO has something similar. Black
I
Desert
would
Online
say-
comes to mind with their Node Wars.
I think World vs. World, in a sense, like did it better than other games. Someone's saying Conqueror's Blade. Yeah, but not really.
Yeah,
That's
where is
still
that
very,
game?
Very
Like,
small scale.
Where is that? Like, yeah, who Megalul, right? That's what that is, okay? Like, and yeah, you can talk about BDO. Listen, okay? BDO is a mob grinding simulator, and then sometimes someone kills you, right? Like, that is what that game is. It's a fun game, right? But like to say that it's like a really big part of it is like this kind of like large scale PvP. I think it's a little bit disingenuous. You go and watch a lot of BDO streamers. They're running around in circles like grinding mobs like it's fucking PoE or something. Like that's what's going on.
It's like I feel like it's the most
GVG system.
coordinated guilds in BDO that actually do the node wars with like the war elephants
Yeah.
and stuff, and that is
No,
cool
but I
to
mean,
watch, but it's a minority.
It's I think in terms of the game mode that like what Teapot's trying to get at is the game mode itself, competitive game mode of servers, that really hasn't been implemented anywhere else really good. Like this game probably does it better. And again, it also maybe it also kind of goes back to the fact that in a sense, Guild Wars 2, in my opinion, has the best and best game game combat mechanics out of all the other MMOs. It's just once you play Guild Wars 2, you find it so hard to kind of go to other MMOs, right? Like
I agree with
you
that.
go back to World
Yeah.
you go back to World of Warcraft, you go back to BDO, and honestly, it's just kind of be like, I can't play this anymore because Guild Wars 2 has really spoiled us with a very, very fluid combat game system.
Yeah, and also it just doesn't screw you over. Like the game doesn't get in the way of you having fun. Like the game just lets you have fun, and you can just do whatever you want. Immediately. You don't have to like wait to have fun. You just go and play. And also, by the way, I do want to point out, guys, that if you're bringing up Arcade Unchained as an alternative to Guild Wars 2, you're kind of making my point for me, by the way. Okay, just and PlanetSide as well. Okay, like that is a very questionable thing to bring up. Okay, if you want to like say, oh, what's the alternative to Guild Wars 2? But it's not just World versus World. Like compare the PvP in Guild Wars 2 to other MMOs. Like PvP in MMOs is a joke, right? Like in Guild Wars 2, not so, right? Like like where Guild Wars 2 actually, funnily enough, does fall down, like is kind of like that kind of like really hardcore PvE experience, right? Which is where games like Final Fantasy and WoW can really, really shine in that situation with like that proper, Mythic Plus for the, which is basically like Blizzard said, hey, those fractals, those are a pretty good idea, aren't they? And then obviously the Mythic rating there is on Savage and Ultimates and Final Fantasy. These are great content. And that's something that I would love to see Guild Wars 2 actually focusing a little bit more, because I think they could deliver great raid content. And they do. Like the raids are a lot of fun in Guild Wars, but I think they could definitely be pushed and like made a little bit more appropriate for the way the game actually works, particularly on the harder difficulty settings there as well. But yeah, like this is what I mean. Like the selling point of Guild Wars 2 is the game, right? Like you don't need to go any further than that. Like the game is a very, very good game, and you don't need to have this like big hook, in my opinion, because I think this is a bit of a trap that a lot of people fall into. Like when they think about MMOs, they think, oh, I want my dopamine rush, bro. You're like a drug addict. Like, oh, give me my next hit, bro. Oh, I need my fix, bro. Oh, 3 DPS extra on that item, bro. It's like, are you kidding me? Like what happened to like actually enjoying gameplay? And like this is where Guild Wars 2 really, really shines, I think. It doesn't really rely on that stuff. Like to keep you playing the game, it doesn't rely on giving you like a purple item that does, 7 DPS more, or like it's going to make you pause a little bit better, on guildwars2logs.com. Like everything that the game does, it's there for you to engage with if you want to and have fun. And, I think that's what, if I was going to advertise Guild Wars 2, if I was going to make the video that eventually, or I've been running from it, guys, right? Okay. Every Guild Wars 2 creator makes the, should you play Guild Wars 2 video? Okay. I'm on my way, right? I'm nearly there, right? Like I've nearly landed. I've nearly made it as a Guild Wars 2 YouTuber, right? And the way I would sell it is like, yeah, like the game just doesn't screw you over. Like the game is fun. Like the reason, if you're looking at something in Guild Wars 2, it's there to play, right? It's there to engage with, right? It's not there to say, oh yeah, you can't do this until you have that item, right? You need to do like that raid first, or do all that stuff first, or grind this first, grind that currency, grind that reputation. No, it's just play, go play. Like, I mean, imagine Guild Wars 2, you could literally raid day one. And in fact, I have had people do this, right? There's a guy called Bok. Well, he's kind of famous on my stream, and he was level 80 warrior. I'm sure he's seen something like this Muck as well. And, this is going to be a good tale. And he made his way to the aerodrome day one. He's like 100 AP, right? He's in full soldier's gear, and he's like, you know what? He joined my Veil Guardian training run. Okay, and obviously he had 2k toughness, so no one could tank. I made him strip naked. Okay, and
Someone clip that for future use.
Right? He killed Veil Guardian completely naked on day one of his play. I mean, wow. Like, what a game. I mean, like, game of the year. Game of the year right there. Okay, incredible.
No, I think, I agree in the sense of, like, it doesn't have to have a huge, but MMOs in general will use something to kind of build, not say build the expansion around, but like kind of something to just like say, oh, by the way, this is a big feature that's coming in this expansion, right? It's not like something that isn't, is going to make you play the expansion, but every MMO does it because it's just something to kind of say, oh, this is a big feature that's coming in this expansion. In general, I mean, again, End of Dragons, mostly the selling point is really right? I think in a sense that it just people are very excited that we're finally kind of leaving Tyria and going into a different map entirely. That in its own is going to be an entire plot point of its own, right? Story mode is basically what this game thrives on. I think, Guild Wars 2 lore for me as a Guild Wars 1 player and a lot of other people who probably agree, whether or not Guild Wars 1 or if you just played in Guild Wars 2, story of this game is very well executed, right? They basically make it like as if you're watching an episode of a long-running series, right? And I think that's a very interesting way of having a storyline progress. But yeah, I don't know. I think I don't know. Someone was saying like maybe game-changing feature could be player housing, or I honestly don't think so. I think maybe just I guess it would be cool, and yeah, there is the money aspect, right? Gem shop stuff, but I would honestly be content with more stuff to the guild hall. I feel like guild halls are things that they could maybe kind of just give a bit more focus to. I think the collective of a community coming together to build something together is more interesting to me than one player showing off his home and personal house in a game to one or two friends. I think building something together is just more of an interesting topic for me, at least.
Well, isn't the new feature elite specs? Like they would Guild Wars 2
Yeah,
is
I mean,
essentially
elite specs because I would say because we've had that in HOT and Path of Fire, so it's kind of expected to get elite specs, right? If we don't get elite specs in End of Dragon,
I think he was asking what are we going to get that will fill the slot for gliders and mounts. I think it was kind of expected that we get elite specs.
Yeah, sure. I mean, like the thing that is going to fit the new slot. I mean, it's going to be something like player housing, right? Like or something like that. But I think that like in terms of like features that the Xbox going to be shipping with, we're going to be shipping with a lot of stuff, right? There's going to be a lot of new content that's going to come out there as well. You're going to have 9 new ways to experience, the game, like 9 new elite specializations. I think you got a lot going on there, right?
Alliances. If alliances is an actual thing in the expansion, then oh boy, dub revival, let's go.
Probably going to come through as well. Like, well, maybe a little bit, maybe kind of. I mean, who knows? With regards to that, I mean, I imagine we're going to see like some kind of instance content as well. Like, so they're probably going to say, "Oh yeah, we're going to focus on strikes in the expansion," which I think is actually plausible that they would do that because they said they aren't done with them yet. That very strongly implies there are going to be strike missions in the expansion, in my opinion. Maybe even they would try raids again. I really hope they do, but we don't. I think if they are going to try a raid, I would expect to hear about it on the 27th. I think, right? Like a little bit of a tease, maybe. I mean, actually, wait, no, it's Ain't. No, I wouldn't. Actually, no, I take it back. But no, but yeah, like, certainly, like they'll talk about. they definitely talk about like some kind of content. They're going to talk about the type of content they're going to release, I think. And yeah, there will be a feature, right? It's just. I am inclined to agree with you, MM. I think it's very difficult. I think they've got a lot in the game. Like the Guild Wars 2 is like very packed. This is an old game. This is a very old game, and they have consistently layered on system after system onto this game over a long time. And there's not really that much else they can do. But I mean, they just might as well call it a day and just add fishing to the game at this point.
Oh boy, I'll make money on fishing alone. Easy.
I'm just imagining a fishing pole that breaks every 25 uses.
No, unlimited fishing tool. Ooh, here we go.
Rare Black Lion chest drop. Sells for 8,000 gold.
What? Oh, why would you give them
already,
ideas?
Like the money's actually gonna happen with that, like
maybe if they use nets, it'll make a little bit more sense if you replace nets.
Well, I think overall, I mean, the fact that this isn't an expansion that's coming out in Tyria. This is an expansion that's taking us abroad to another continent. It's that alone, like, probably going to be in itself, I guess you could say, the game changer, right? The fact that we're tied off these threads, like we talked about, these storylines that just kind of got tied up, and again, disappointing or not, but we're heading into a direction that's very different, very unexpected. We have really no idea what this expansion can throw at us in a way, because it's entirely new area, right? They give us 5 or 10 new maps to explore, but we've never been in any place that's similar to these maps, and that alone is going to probably fulfill a lot of I guess veteran gameplay. People have been just playing since day one and just want something new. There you have it. That expansion is basically in itself a huge 180. It's like as if you wouldn't have, like, you could tell someone, if you could play End of Dragons, you probably it'd be a different game if you just played Guild Wars 2 from scratch, right? That's basically what we're getting.
Yeah, I mean that's an interesting one, and this is slightly segue from what you just said, but it's kind of like building off that last thing. One thing that I think they should absolutely do, which is definitely one of the, in my opinion, like major flaws with Guild Wars 2 right now, is that if you're playing an MMO, it is not a TV series. If you're, oh man, you should watch Game of Thrones. You're not going to watch, and you've never seen it before. You're not going to start with season 8, right? You're going to start with season 1 and work your way through and build up to some disappointment. But like like when it comes to this sort of thing, if you don't play Guild Wars 1, Guild Wars 2 through from the start, like who is Braham, right? Who is this person? Right? Like, who is Rox? Like, who are all these, like, characters? Like, why am I the commander, right? Like, what's going on here, right? And this is something I would love to see. Now, again, they might be a bit pushed for resources, but I would absolutely love it if they had, like, a full leveling experience in Cantha. Like, a new, Timey dead, right? Okay, she's just dead. Braham, he's like, oh, I am too weak, right? Like, I can't continue. Go
if
on
I
without
still
me,
cared
Commander.
about the story,
right?
I'd be offended right now.
Right. Yeah. Okay, and then you've got all these other characters. They're just write them out, like just write them out. Let's start again with Cantha, so people join in the game, know what the hell is going on, right? And so it's much easier for them to kind of connect with the story and with the world instead of having to play through 2 expansions and like 3 seasons worth of living story to know what on earth is actually going on and who all these like different characters are.
I do think, and GuildMM touched on this much earlier, this is just coming from my experience with when WoW released Wrath of the Lich King. They released a new class, which was the Death Knight. And the Death Knight it didn't make any sense in the story for them to be in the newbie zones. So the Death Knight started at level 50, but you could only make one if you had already leveled a character to 50 in the past, and then that option unlocked. And I honestly don't think ArenaNet is going to make a new class or a new race, but they totally could if they follow something like that. Like, for example, you can make one of the Tengu that everybody is going cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs for, but it starts at level 70 in a 70 to 80 zone in Cantha, but you have to have had a level 70 in the past. Something like that would not be very difficult, and then just make it so that character can't play the core story. And you wouldn't have to go back and voice act the old lines with a Tengu voice actor or anything like that.
I think if they introduce a new race, it should start at the expansion. It should never be, because they basically have not been part of the story anyway, right? So why should they have to rework everything? So yeah, and I agree with that. Like if it starts from only that moment and onwards.
Which is what they did in Guild Wars 1. You could make a new character and factions in the faction storyline.
The thing is with Guild Wars 1, the expansions, or as they called them, campaigns back in the day, is they were all kind of standalone, and then you just kind of had the main characters from each campaign appear or not appear sometimes. Like there were some NPCs from Guild Wars 1 who appeared in the next expansion, which was factions. But if you played only factions, you would not have missed anything. You wouldn't have been like, oh, who is this NPC? Because they kind of just introduced them in a way where it's like, oh, this is a friend from a long time kind of thing.
Yeah, it's just like you just didn't know what Menlo did in his college days, but it wasn't a big deal.
Exactly. So it kind of it made it easier for you to just digest the story. And same with Nightfall. And I guess Eye of the North as well. Eye of the North as a standalone expansion, if you just played that alone as well, it's fine because it actually has an entirely new set of characters that you deal with. So.
Okay.
I see you answering chat, huh?
Well, I'm answering chat. Don't worry, I am listening, and I don't disagree with any of that stuff. I mean, like when it comes to new race, don't do it. Like it's not a good idea. We don't want it in Guild Wars 2, and why is that? Because if there's one thing that ArenaNet has difficulty with, it is making armor skins. Right? They are quite famous as going on record saying that it takes them like 9 months to make one set of armor, which is why we have outfits now as opposed to proper sets. there as well a lot of the time, and they do still release like the odd full set and some full like pieces that can actually be mixed and matched, but a lot of the time you don't really get like complete things in that way. You want to add a new race to all of that, you want to have to remodel everything so it works on like the Tengu with like feathers and these birds about the place. The amount of work it would take to do that, listen guys, okay, we're talking about like we're talking about the company, right, that that took it was supposed to deliver legendary weapons with HOT. That Exordium, guys, that was supposed to release with HOT, by the way, okay? And it released basically towards the end of season 4, right, of Living Story, right? Like, do you really want them to do a whole new race? No, you don't, right? I think a new race would be cool, by the way, and I actually think it would be a great hook for players to return to the game and new players to return to the game.
But we're not counting on it.
No, because if they did that, you'd get to the expansion and it would be an empty island with one mob on it, right? Like that will be all they'll have done, like outside of the new race. They won't have had any time to develop anything else. It would be a complete disaster, I think.
That's also kind of why, like, if they did develop the race, it has to start at level, a very close map, like either level cap or at like close to level cap, because it would be a waste to have 3-4 maps dedicated to a race and then the other 5 maps that are only dedicated to level 80 zones. You miss out on providing more content you can do for the existing races and the existing storyline, rather than cut it through with the race that takes up half of the expansion's development.
Well, it's just that I don't think that okay. I mean, I'm speaking this from a semi self-centered point of view. Like I like Guild Wars 2 quite a lot. Okay, for those who don't know, and I think it's very good. And what I care about is gameplay. And in my opinion, what's really going to get people stuck in this game is that the gameplay's fun and they enjoy playing the game itself. And a new race is cool. Don't get me wrong, right? I think, being able to play a different type of character and have a different story and new characters that you can interact with and all that kind of stuff, right? That's fun. Like, I like story. I mean, I enjoy the story in Guild Wars 2. I enjoy the world as much as the next man. But I think that in terms of like development priorities, particularly if it's going to be very, very costly, and it has historically had a lot of difficulty with developing stuff like this, which they have, like across the board, like they have had trouble developing stuff like skins and like making it work with all these different characters, right? Because you got to make every item work for every race, right? Or at least vaguely, right, in the case of certain races. But I don't think it's really worth it, right? Like yeah, you'll kind of like hook some new players in, but I would imagine that something might end up suffering for that. It's going to be a lot of development time that would go into that. It'd be difficult to actually pull off. You might end up with like less skins, for the end game rules. You might have like less, less new customization options there, or maybe like the cosmetics for the new player housing would suffer because of that. Like maybe they don't have time to fix the guild hall because of that, for example, right? Like I would much rather they actually address issues in the game and build new content and new kind of like side grades or like upgrades to certain features within the game than worry about like being able to play as like a a talking chicken.
I think kind of the same. If they can do it, okay, that's great. But if they do it, but it also cuts on development of other features, then I'd rather just the other features are perfected, right? So that situation.
I mean, it will be that would be nice.
So we are almost kind of out of time with Muckluck here. So Muck,
he's ditching. Yeah, it's us.
Oh man, you don't say, "Oh, we're almost out of our allotted time." You just pick me and just throw me under the bus.
Yeah, no, I mean, no.
The school bus bringing my son home is just gonna bump right over me. GuildMM's driving.
Got valid reasons. I won't, keep you from being a parent because.
No, let's keep going. I'm just gonna leave. The door's locked. He'll be outside. We've got a porch. He'll be out in the rain. Let's just keep going. It's fine.
I'm playing chicken. Right now. Who's going to go the longest? Who's going to quit first, Muck? Okay, is it going to be you or is it going to be me? Who's going to leave the call first? It's like one of those Mr. Beast challenges.
Someone DDoS this Teapot.
Oh boy.
If we do want to...
Any closing comments, it's up to you, Teapot, if you actually want to continue, or we can end it right here. So either way, up to you guys. But Muck, I feel like you could have some closing moments before you have to go help your kid. Otherwise, he's locked outside and not a very good thing. So yeah,
Father of the year.
Anything you
Okay.
wanna
So
add?
closing comments, broad generalizations. The Iceberg Saga. The beginning, the beginning was cool. You know, I think they overhyped it with the announcement. At the end, it really seems like unless they say something otherwise, it really seems like they had more planned. It reminded me so much of like when you're reading a comic or a manga. For those of you already in Kantha, if you're reading something like that, and then suddenly the editor tells the writer, and he's like, "Hey, I know you had 100 more issues planned, but we're cutting you off, so wrap it up in the next 2." It felt like that. I've seen that so many times. So it definitely felt like it was rushed. It kind of stinks, but I really hope that that's just behind us now. I'm very much looking forward to the Kantha stuff. But for me personally, the new Elite specs, I can't wait to do some like theory crafting and messing around with new builds and stuff like that. New lands to run around in, that's great, but I really don't care if there's dirt or sand under my feet. I just want to hit people in new, unique ways. And yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to the balance patch, and looking forward to the legendary armory. As someone who is finally in full legendaries, I actually beat Teapot. I'm shocked by that. When I saw you tweeting, they're like, "Oh my god, Aurora was so tough." I'm like, "How did I beat this man on Aurora?" So I am glad to be there.
I was scared of it. Like I didn't.
To be fair, Chalice of Tears is very scary.
Yeah, it is. I mean, like the thing is, like the reason I didn't do Aurora is because I just didn't want to. I had no reason to, right? Because before Legendary Armory, Legendary gear was just like very annoying, very expensive Ascended gear, basically. And I had so much of that I had zero motivation to do it. Like I was like, no, okay, I will not go around and collect your 40 Mersat tokens. I will not do it. It is not happening. But, you know, I've done them all now. I'm just basically waiting on, you know, I'm nearly finished up all of my legendary sets, like all the heavy stuff, the sigils, all that stuff. I'm just, you know, basically need to farm a bit more gold. Then I am good to go on that there as well. I mean, actually, like, things we are going to wrap this up here. You know, there's something that I was trying to like get this like mild troll question in the entire time. I'm just going to shoehorn it in now. Actually, now I lurk around in a lot of streams. And I've watched the journey of Mukluk with great interest, okay? Because, you know, like just like 6 months ago, he was bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, having fun in the game. Like none of the problems that like all the veteran players like knew about like were apparent.
And now I'm a jaded cop trying to get his attention.
Yeah. And now he's one of us, guys, okay? Now, I honestly, there was this moment, okay? And it's weird because you actually, it was after our first podcast and you were in Mistlock Sanctuary, right? And I was weird because I was like listening. I was like just doing my thing. And then I hear you mention my name. I was like, whoa, what's going on here? Is he about to talk some shit? Right? But obviously, no, he wasn't because he's a very nice man. But... and he basically was like, "Oh yeah," like it was after a concert. It was actually it was about Whisper of Jormag actually, because you just done Whisper of Jormag and it completely broken as usual. And you know, you were talking about how like you report it and nothing happened, right? And you kept reporting it and nothing happened, right? And there was this like big moment. I was like, "Oh yes, he knows. He's become enlightened to Guild Wars 2."
You were drinking my salty tears.
Yeah. And I'm just curious. I would love to know from your perspective, actually. What do you think are the biggest issues in the game, and what do you and your audience like kind of butt heads with in Guild Wars 2 on a regular basis? Because obviously you have a lot of new players in your audience, and you know, I suppose in a way, like you yourself are to an extent a new veteran, right? You're a new veteran player, kind of breaking onto the scene there, being a little bit more of a hardcore casual these days, like the rest of us.
Okay,
like what's your take on that?
Like you, I brainwash my audience, so I don't butt heads with them at all. We agree on everything. But what I have convinced them all to believe is, like, Guild Wars 2 is a great game, but I no longer have the illusion that I have any control over it. I feel like I'm just along for the ride, and I'm riding it, and I'm enjoying it, and I am making content for it, and it's great. But like, you know, I no more will I do videos or like, you know, top things I would love to get fixed, and then, hey Ben P, will you watch my video? And he's like, yeah, sure. And then it's like, you know, it's like the Facebook just says message seen last year, you know, and that's the last thing I see from him, and I'm like, oh man, all right, you know, it's like there's no more drive to do content like that. So now it's just like, okay, this is how it is. This is broke. I've hit the report button once. It's been in their inbox for 11 months. I'm just gonna warn people. I'm just gonna move on. But as far as like the biggest faults, I think it's just their tendency to put something down and then run to the next thing. Dungeons, fractals, raids. It's been over a year since the last wing. They did strikes, and they grew on me. I really started enjoying strikes, despite the fact that Whisper Jormag is bugged 10 ways till Tuesday. And then they were like, Dragon Response missions. And I'm like, dang it, I loved strikes. Like, when I heard DRMs, I immediately went, dang it, I loved strikes. Because I thought that was the nail in the last thing's coffin. So, yeah, it's just, instead of, like, continuing to hone something that they made that works, they very much are like, ooh, piece of candy. And then they just run over to the next thing. So that would be what I think is the biggest weakness. I know Outlook, stop beeping at me.
They want to cook a filet mignon, but they want to skip the steps to make a perfect filet mignon. That's what it kind of sometimes is like.
No, it's like they were cooking a filet mignon and it was coming out perfectly, and then the guy screamed into the kitchen, "Are my chicken nuggets ready?" And they were like, "Fuck!" And then they just like knocked the filet, I can't even say millet mignon, onto the floor, and then they started microwaving nuggies. And halfway through that, then some guy screamed for a burger, and it keeps happening.
Yeah, that's honestly a great analogy. It's they just never finish cooking it. It's like they'll say, oh, they'll say, hey, take a taste of this, right? And it's like it's obviously undercooked because they've only been cooking it for like 1 minute, and like, oh, yep, that's terrible. Throw it away, right? Break out the tendies, boys. Okay, it's tendy time. And yeah, that's exactly what the arena has a tendency of doing. I would completely agree with that. Like, I think it's no surprise to me that you have reached that conclusion. The wrinkly brain is here, but I think that will be my troll question there for the end of the stream. I suppose. Oh well, actually, I'm okay to go if you want to go more. By the way, like I can talk about Guild Wars forever.
Yeah,
I can do this all day. I know
you can.
Yeah. The stamina on these men. This is a great time to tell you guys this stream is brought to you by Blue Chew. For Blue Chew, please go to GuildMM/
Blue Chew. This stream is sponsored by my crown, please. And my sunglasses.
Is that what they call it in Dubai?
They call it, well, no, my stream calls it Burger King crown. So, like, I've been trolled with this now at this point.
All right, I really do gotta step out. I gotta go into dad mode. Y'all have been wonderful. Thank you for having me.
See you later.
Much luck. Thank you.